What is up, everybody? Sunday afternoon, evening, Buffalo Bills Sunday football is back, and it's a Buffalo Bills football Sunday, victory Sunday, I should say. The Buffalo Bills win 18-10, 6 field goals, what everybody dialed up, right, Ryan, against these New York Jets.
Yeah, just what everyone was expecting against the worst team in the NFL coming into this game, a game where you were expecting to see a little bit more from the offense, but like Josh Allen said, they're 5-2, and like Sean McDermott said, every game in this league is tough.
Yeah, so this is the Shout Buffalo Bills football podcast. He is Ryan Talbot. I am Matt Parrino. We are officially sponsored by Tops Friendly Markets, your neighborhood store with more. Shout out to them. I'm going to probably run over there in a little while so we can get ourselves a little late night treat. We've been these home games, working from home, they're just so weird. I go down to the stadium for the pregame show. We get that in down there with Josh Reed and Thad Brown from Channel 4 and 8 in Rochester. And then I come racing home to cover the game. And today now I put the big screen in my bedroom to get away from the hustle and bustle. But the studio itself that I've made in my house is down here. So you'll hear some extracurriculars in the background. But let's start here, Ryan. There's so much to talk about in this game. Obviously, storylines coming out, the defense getting right in a big way in the second half. Josh Allen, 300 yards in a game where the Bills don't score a single touchdown. And Tyler Bass, what's your 6 of 8 field goals? What was your big takeaway from this game?
Big takeaway for me is the red zone offense needs to get fixed. You moved the ball very well today against the Jets. And yes, I know it's the Jets, but you wanted to see the Bills move the ball, and they were able to do that. Some were longer drives, some were some bigger chunk plays here and there, and they were able to get it. Some had to do with great starting field position, thanks to Andre Roberts. Bottom line is the Bills kind of shot themselves in the foot all game long with penalties, or they just couldn't execute on those third down plays. The Jets were dialing up the right plays on third down. The Bills couldn't execute when it mattered most. Most games you cannot win in the NFL by only kicking field goals. They lucked out today. They were able to hold off the Jets. Kudos to that defense. Like you said, they got right in the second half. They shut down just about anything and everything the Jets tried to do. So it was definitely an encouraging sign from that side of the ball. But there's a long way to go from this offense now, despite them moving the ball very well and the team not punting once in this game.
Yeah, I tweeted that out there. It's a wild stat. You bring up the possession tracker on the stat sheet, and miss field goal, fumble, field goal, miss field goal, end of the game. This team finished every drive in the New York Jets territory. And, when talking to Josh Allen after the game, listening to him talk after the game, I wasn't able to get a question in, but you kind of saw that kind of frustration a little bit on his face, because it's like, yeah, we did execute pretty well. He was asked, what did the Jets do? Greg Williams' defense do? Was it similar to what Tennessee did and Kansas City did? And they're like, yeah, they played that zone defense. They took away down the field. We had to make things. We had to be patient and work our way down the field. And I thought they did a good job of that. And a guy that really showed up today and they got him the ball today was Cole Beasley. 12 targets, 11 catches, a season high 112 receiving yards. He, to me, as long as John Brown is on the sideline, is so instrumental in how the Bills are going to move the ball on drives, because Stephon Diggs, he's going to get so much attention in these games because you don't have that deep threat opposite him of John Brown. You have Dawson Knox, who I thought, Tyler Kroft, hats off to him. He had a good game today. I saw you very funny with the Daniel Jones tweet. I didn't think it was the same kind of play per se, but I always appreciate your comedic timing.
Yeah, couldn't keep to the footing. Like I said, the old turf monster got him just like it did Jones. You're right. And it wasn't the same play. I mean, Jones should have run in, no problem. He had his footing for the majority of the run and just lost at the end. Kroft jumped up in the air and kind of lost his balance from the get-go, so not the same at all. But going to Cole Beasley was phenomenal. And, it's hard to just pick one good play from Beasley today, but if I had to pick one, it'd be right before halftime, where he not only caught that Josh Allen pass, but he dove ahead to get the Bills right into field goal range right before half, where they could then cut the lead to 10-6. So he's just very smart, very savvy when he gets the ball in his hands. He knows when to get down. He knows exactly where the Bills need to go with the ball. And like you said, The execution was there, 11 out of 12 in terms of targets. The one thing I will say about Josh Allen is as the game went on, I do think he started to take what the defense would give him. I liked a lot of those quick passes out into the flat, the little drop-offs, the drop-offs to the running backs, you name it. Early in the game, though, he tried to get a little greedy with Stephon Diggs, and he had a ball go off of Pierre Desir's hands, and he tried to go to Gabe Davis, I believe, in the end zone, and that went off of the other cornerback's hands and could have been an interception. So he's got to still – I get he's your number one wide receiver. You want to get him the ball, but you do have to be smart in these games. We know that when the Bills turn it over, it usually does not lead to wins at the end of the day. So be smart with the football. Allen's only turnover today. I'm not going to necessarily say it's on him. He was hit hard after a missed block, and that's going to happen to NFL quarterbacks. You saw Darnold try to run and scramble in this game, and Hughes stripped him of the ball earlier in the game. So it happens. It wasn't necessarily one of his fault where he was running wildly with it. So overall, up and down day in terms of execution, but moving the ball, the Bills' offense was fantastic.
5 sacks on the day for this Bills defense, led by Jerry Hughes. 2 sacks. He went into this game looking for his first sack and delivered in a big way. 2 quarterback hits, 1 tackle for a loss, an interception, a pass deflection, a forced fumble. This was an absolutely monster game for Jerry Hughes, and respect to him because he's a guy this week when he, all these guys, the guys that are out there week in and week out, Micah Hyde, Jerry Hughes, having to answer for a lot of the struggles. He was out there and kind of put it on his own back and said, listen, I need to be better. I need to go out there and I need to make plays. I mean, we've talked about it a few times. This defensive line across the board, they make a lot of money. I mean, Trent Murphy's making nearly $10 million a year. Jerry Hughes over $10 million. Mario Addison over $10 million. They gave Vernon Butler a nice contract. They have some pieces on this defensive line that are being compensated, and you have to go out there and earn that. And I thought that, first thing I'll say, hat tip to Trent Murphy. I thought that he brought some aggression early on in this game, combined for a sack with AJ Epinesa. But then over the course of the game, we saw what I think a lot of the film analysts have been talking about over the last couple of weeks. Jerry Hughes still stands out on tape. It just, those sack numbers weren't there. Today, I felt like he reached another level and really brought it for them.
Yeah, Hughes was dominant. He was outstanding. Like I said, the strip fumble in the game that the Jets ultimately recovered. Late in the game, when they couldn't take any sacks, the Bills came in one with Marlowe, but then Hughes gets another one. Then he gets the interception to seal the game. He was absolutely dominant on Sunday against the Jets. I thought that entire defensive line, though, played pretty well today as well. So a little tip of the cap to them because they've really struggled. Like you said, Trent Murphy, inactive, healthy scratch last week, had a sack in week 1 against the Jets, gets credited with half a sack in this one. We saw Addison get in there. We saw Ed Oliver make some splash plays. AJ Epinesa, I thought, really flashed at times today, too. So, and was it Vernon Butler that tipped the pass that Hughes ultimately intercepted, or am I?
I'm going to give you. I was writing fast at that point, so
I'm trying to remember if it was Jefferson or Butler, one or the other. Either way, they made a play on the ball too. So
yeah, I mean the Bills had 6 pass deflections today. That's as a group. Just talking about that, we're talking about making plays. Those are big plays for a defense that hasn't been able to really turn the ball over a ton. Even just getting your hands on the ball, and we'll talk about one guy in particular that made a huge statement today, and we can maybe transition to him at this point. Let's go right into Dane Jackson, because I saw you posted a question in here. What did you think about my main man, Dane Jackson? I have a story about Dane Jackson.
Yeah.
I'm always the first one to, raise my hand when I'm wrong or make a mistake, because I think that's the best way to move forward and learn from your mistakes. And I think and luckily for me, I didn't respond to this tweet. So there's no receipts per se, but somebody tweeted at me the other day and said, the Bills coaching staff is hiding Dane Jackson on the practice squad because they don't want or they don't want to admit that the guys that they're playing, Josh Norman, Levi Wallace, Saran Neal, maybe whoever the case would have been, weren't as good as Dane Jackson. And I kind of laughed at it, and I was kind of like, listen, I watched him in training camp. It looked like he was a little bit out of his depth. I asked Sean McDermott on Friday, what were your thoughts on Dane Jackson? Because we haven't seen him at all. There's a chance he could play. And lo and behold, Josh Norman is out. We get to game day. Everybody is active except for Josh Norman, and Dane Jackson gets the call over Cam Lewis, who didn't play, who probably was only going to play in an emergency, and then Saran Neal, did not play on that outside corner spot. That was my thought process going into the game. That's what I thought would play there. Dane Jackson comes out. He makes a play on the first series, a huge pass breakup with the Bills backed up against their own end zone, forces them to kick the field goal. And then obviously the big interception, only the second interception. That's another thing. The broadcast got that wrong. That was the second interception by Bills defensive back. The second this season. I know big news there, but Levi Wallace had a pick in the Rams game. What a huge performance by Dane Jackson. And it's a big importance because if they can get that kind of level of play from cornerback 2, if you can have him maybe unseat Josh Norman, your 7th round draft pick, that could be a huge deal for this defense.
Yeah, and first, though, let's pump the brakes here a little bit. It was one game. It was against the Jets, but he looked fantastic. I'm going to give him that. Pass breakup on Denzel Mims, opening drive where the Jets are just moving with ease down the field. So to make them kick a field goal there was extremely huge, especially when you look at the final score here where, it was 18-10 and a touchdown wouldn't have been the difference maker, but the Bills would have played a little bit differently had they trailed 14-0 or whatever the case may have been at that point. So he makes a big play there. He makes the interception on a terrible Sam Darnold play. For as good as I think Sam Darnold can be, that interception before halftime was atrocious. I have no idea what he saw. Pretty much threw it to Jackson, but to Jackson's credit, he was in the right spot. He made the play. You need to see that from your cornerbacks. Now, is he better than Josh Norman? Is he better than Levi Wallace? Is he better than Saran Neal, Cam Lewis? The list goes on and on. We don't know. It's too small of a sample size, but this was encouraging. We needed to see a cornerback step up on Sunday, and one did. The fact that they're able to get him in the 7th round, that kind of goes to the scouting department and the job that they do in terms of finding these guys and looking for guys that have those NFL traits in the later rounds. Now, like you said, Cam Lewis, he had a big club on his hand all week. Probably was not going to get in unless you needed to play him. He may have ended up being inactive in this game had it not been for everything that happened right before game day, where you have all the tight ends that go on the COVID reserve list, things like that. It could have really adjusted the roster and what the Bills are planning on doing there. So he stepped up. Bottom line, I'm encouraged to see what he does with his next opportunity. I think he's going to have a fair chance to have that opportunity soon because we don't know when Levi's coming back. He's still on the IR. Josh Norman suffering that injury again. We don't know when he's going to be good to go. So, coming in next week now against New England, I just watched Cam Newton throw an interception. He's not playing good football. He overshot a target in the game that should have been an easy completion. So maybe Jackson fares well in that matchup too, and maybe there is something to it. It wasn't that long ago the Bills had Levi Wallace as their number 2 as an undrafted free agent rookie who came in and settled in as the year went on. Maybe that is what Jackson does, but we're also still, a week and a half or so away from the trade deadline. The Bills could also try to find someone there.
I want to get into this a little bit because I went on WGR this morning and I heard them talking a little bit about what this game, is for fans. What does it need to be in terms of how the Bills perform in this spot? And, there's that crowd that a win is a win is a win. And then there's that crowd that going into this game was, all right, this is a get-right game against a really bad Jets team. You go out there and you absolutely pound them. And that's not really what happened. I think that the defense pounded them in the second half. The offense, surprisingly, really moved the ball well throughout this game. Aside from that shaky start by Josh Allen, which you had mentioned, the numbers really tell a different story than even the game that I felt like I watched. 422 yards of total offense. They want to be better on third down, 3 of 11. That's never good. They did not execute in the red zone, obviously 0 for 5. But the ball was moved up and down the field on this Jets defense, as you should. So you take that, at face value. A 4th game this year with no interception by Josh Allen. So did they dominate? No. But I still think you come out of this game at least with a sense of confidence that when your team doesn't have the best thing going for itself, they didn't have their best stuff today on either side of the ball, because on the defensive side of the ball in the first half, Frank Gore was kind of running at will. I wrote a little bit about that in my observations, but you come back, you find a way to win on the road, a division game. I think you take something from that. I don't necessarily think that the world has to come to an end that the Bills didn't go in there and smash the Jets today, but your rebuttal.
No, I actually agree with that. And like I was said earlier in the show, penalties really hurt the Bills when they'd get down deep. They'd suffer some kind of penalty. Then they'd have an offensive lineman move or jump or little things like that. They would drive you back. And at one point it was 2nd and 25 and then 3rd and 18. They were moving the ball and then they were getting themselves in bad spots. And at the end of the day, it's hard to execute. I know, some teams have executed on those long 3rd down plays against the Bills this season, but the Bills haven't necessarily weren't able to do that today, or even on the 3rd and short. The Jets just dialed up the right plays. But it's kind of hard to sit there and say that the Bills also didn't have a good game. They threw for over 300 yards. They rushed for over 125. Second half, the defense was dominant, so the Bills were on the field a lot more in terms of that time of possession. So it'd be a completely different game if there was no illegal formation on the Gabriel Davis touchdown. It'd be a completely different game if Beasley hadn't stepped out of bounds and showed amazing body control and hauled in the next pass. It's just it's 1 or 2 plays that can make a game look like it got away from one team, but that never happened today for Buffalo to make that 1 or 2 plays to make the score look more lopsided than it really was in the second half. So at the end of the day, it is a win. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't pretty. But they did execute. The one big complaint that I would have if I were a Bills fan sitting at home is, why are you not running the ball early in the game? Midway through the second half, I believe, is when they had their first handoff of the game. So that's a little worrisome. I know that they said, the Jets have a great run defense. Listen, I get it. They do. But you still have to test that run defense. You still have to see what your running backs can do. And guess what? When you gave Zack Moss the ball today, the guy averaged almost 7 yards per carry. Even on some of those shorter gains, he kept his legs moving and he grinded ahead. And he took a 2nd and 4 play, 3 yards, when I think he kind of drove the pile here about 2 yards to make it a manageable 3rd and 1. I thought he had his best game by far of his career. And I wouldn't be shocked if he has more touches than Devin Singletary next week, but I don't want to get too far ahead of myself here. Get the run game more involved, show some balance, because if you're just going to sit back there and let Allen throw early in games, defenses are going to adjust quickly, whether it's the Patriots next week, whether it's the Seahawks, whoever is remaining on the schedule. And there's some really tough matchups left on the schedule.
I want to dive a little bit more into that. I got a little take, not even like a rant, but we'll get into it after a quick word from our sponsor.
Ready for football? Tops is with ready-to-serve fan favorites everyone will cheer for. Delicious family or party packs like pizza, sliders, fried chicken, barbecue, or beef on whack, starting at only $4 per serving. Perfect for game day and any day. Only at Tops.
All right. If you listen to our podcast, our videos, or anything that, our radio hits over the years, I've been a pretty big proponent for what Brian Daboll has done with this offense and his development of Josh Allen. I'm a big fan of his. I think that he does a really nice job. I think that, a lot of the credit early on this season, that first month, goes to him and his creativity as a play caller. But the one kind of thing that sticks with me over these 3 years, the one bugaboo that I have with him is that sometimes I feel like, whether it be a skew towards the run or a skew towards the pass, there's times when he kind of gets very stagnant in his play calling, where he'll go, he'll say, okay, we're going up against a really good Jets defense today. We are going to go out there and we are going to attack them through the air because they're so good against the run. Well, he goes to just the pass for the first quarter, and it's almost at the team's detriment. And I think that kind of what happens there is that they struggle then to get into a rhythm over the course of the game. And I feel like, as things, we mentioned Josh's struggles at the beginning of the game, I think you could have maybe mitigated some of that if you had gone to the run game a little bit early. And then, you fast forward to the second half, and when they have a drive going at one point, I think they run a 12-yard run. I believe it was Moss. Oh no, it was Singletary. He had a 12-yard run and then a 5-yard run and then a 1-yard run. And it's like, okay, mix it up a little bit at times. And listen, this is a small complaint. I still have been, I'd still give Brian Daboll very high marks, not only this year, but for his tenure in Buffalo. But that's just one thing that I just think that sometimes he goes too much to the well, in the same well too often.
I agree 100% with that. I think he's done a great job overall. And I know some people on social media in that first half where the Bills were trailing were saying, oh, yeah, what happened with Daboll being this hot head coaching candidate? He still will be at the end of the season if the Bills are in the playoffs. If Josh Allen continues to throw for almost 70%, can you question what he does in these games just like today? 100%. Can you question what he does in the red zone sometimes? Absolutely. And I did not like that he didn't get the backs involved early in these games. Now, it's a lot better than those old teams where Dick Duran was the head coach and it was run, pass, and was as predictable as can be. But you got to mix it up. You got to get the running back. If it's second and manageable, give the back the ball there because you have Josh Allen on third who can run or throw with the ball. There's definitely some plays where I think Daboll will go back and he'll say, okay, I really probably should have gotten Moss involved here. You could see the Jets were kind of sitting back and waiting for the pass in this play. So hopefully he goes back and he adjusts. It's really important that the Bills do that because, like I just said a few minutes ago, this schedule is going to get tough and fast, and you need to have a balanced offense. One, just to kind of get them moving a little bit, keep defenses on their toes. But two, I think some of these games coming up, time of possession will be huge. And if you're just throwing the ball all over the yard all day, you're not going to necessarily be able to control that time of possession, which is going to be big against some of those high-scoring offenses that are still on the schedule where you want to keep them on the sidelines as long as possible.
I didn't ask Josh today in the post-game press conference because I think it's a better Wednesday question about, okay, they did a lot of the same things that Tennessee and Kansas City did. They're a good defense, no doubt about it, but when is the switch going to be flipped where you're still able to adapt to what they're doing, make an adjustment, and still make plays down the field? Because that's going to have to continue. This can't just be the blueprint on Josh Allen and this offense. And that's something that, I want to kind of reserve that conversation until Wednesday because I want to ask him a little bit about that and be like, okay, now that you've seen this for the third straight game and it's still, at least the downfield stuff's not working, where's the adjustment? What do you have to do better? Now, one thing I will say, Mitch Morse was very apologetic. He was very forthright in taking the responsibility on himself and said, I didn't do a good job protecting the quarterback today. There was too much of the time today where I looked in the backfield and guys had beat me and Josh Allen was getting hit. And so, that's a big piece of this as well. I think the struggles that the Bills are having, the pocket looks a lot different the last 3 weeks than it did the first 4 weeks.
Yeah, and you have Mitch Morse, and next to him is Ike Butker because there's some changes there. You have Brian Winters, who was really up and down leading up to the regular season this year. Right guard until John Feliciano returns. So, Morse being the veteran, being the kind of the leader of that offensive line, he's going to take the blame. He's going to put that on himself. But there were some pockets that were not clean for Allen where he had to sidestep pressure. But we've seen Allen do that so much in his career. It's almost second nature now, and you don't want it to become a thing of habit. You want there to be great blocking in front of him consistently so he can have that clean pocket, scan the field, which that did happen a few times today. So, a lot of up and down things. I would love to hear what he says to that question on Wednesday because this has been the blueprint for opposing teams. Hey, here's what we're going to do. Let's see if Allen can beat us. Now, Allen, they technically beat the Jets today with that offense, throwing for 307 yards, rushing really well with the ball. But he wasn't able to punch the ball in for a touchdown. Now, does that change when John Brown comes back? I would like to think so, because then you have another guy that can stretch the field, that can get big, large chunk plays. Dawson Knox, as frustrating as he can be with catches, with turnovers, they're missing that athleticism probably at the tight end position. So, he's missing some pieces, but at the same time, you don't want to just see Josh Allen perform when everyone else around him is healthy. He does have to kind of carry this team on his back at times. And while it was good enough today, I don't know how many games it's going to be good enough where you score 18 points all via field goal.
All right, I have a little bit of breaking news. I asked Tyler Bass what is up with the one eye black, because I that's something that I've seen the last couple weeks, and I've just been like, he didn't go to LSU. Like, what's going on here with this one eye black? And he basically said it's a swag effect. Like, he just wants to feel a little bit extra confident. He goes out there, it gives him a little extra motivation. And so anybody that was wondering about that, that's the reasoning behind why he does wear the one eye black. But a huge day for him today. And it's so fitting that he got 8 field goal attempts today, because I was talking on the pregame show about, me and Thad were going back and forth a little bit on, whether or not this should be a concern with, his early season struggles. And I was like, I get it. And I even get it even further when you look today and he misses 2 field goals. But I also wonder how much his lack of opportunities, lack of reps in live game action impacted things from that perspective. And so I asked him today, point blank, I'm like, okay, you get out there today, 8 field goal attempts in one game. How important is that for your confidence and just going through it? And he said it was huge. And so now I think that the clock really starts on Tyler Bass. Now, everything that happens from this point on is where one of the questions in here was MVP or GOAT on Bass-O-Matic, he calls him. And I had to say MVP today. He was the only guy that scored points. But from here on out, I think that you judge him a little bit differently because now he's been out there, he's been in it, he's felt the pressure of big kicks, and really in the long term, Ryan, this could be really, really good for Tyler Bass. What happened today?
Yeah, all those opportunities, and I was going to call him the most valuable GOAT because he did make 6 of the 8, so most valuable in that regard. Now he kept the Jets in it though. I mean, if he converts all of them, then this game is put away a little bit earlier. So it's a little concerning that he missed one of the shorter kicks. Some of the other ones, you kind of hold in your breath if you're a Bills fan until you see it actually go through because the ball shifts a little bit from left to right or right to left when he kicks it. So you're wondering, okay, is this going to hold on? Yes or no? But like you said, he scored all the points for this team today. So he is still one of the most valuable players. They don't win this game without him. So, Bills fans, relax. Social media, oh my goodness. After that first missed kick, I had some Section 6 Western New York kicker saying the Bills should bring him in to compete against Bass. Settle down, guy. I'm sure you were great in high school. I'm sure there's a team that's going to give you a call at some point this season. But let the Bills kind of ride with their rookie a little bit. There's going to be some ups and downs. And I think the Bills even acknowledged that when he ended up beating Hauschka. And I had other people saying, oh, yeah, we really miss Hauschka. Well, then you didn't watch Hauschka's one game with Jacksonville. And I'm not trying to beat up on this guy because he was very valuable to Buffalo when he was here. But he missed, I think it was a 29-yarder and then a 40-some-yard kick. He kicked short. He kicked it short. So in the elements in Buffalo, Hauschka would not have survived this year. There's not much out there. I'll be the first to acknowledge that. You can bring in some kickers if you want to add a guy to your practice squad, to add some pressure maybe, to add some competition. But you're not going to find anything better out there than Bass right now. These are the growing pains you have to live with. It happens. And over time, you hope he becomes consistent. It's kind of like the Dustin Hopkins. Now, Hopkins, when he was in Buffalo, he didn't make the team because of injuries. But when he did make it with Washington, there were some ups and downs a little bit. And now he's one of the better kickers, or had been one of the better kickers entering this season. So you got to kind of ride this out. Don't give up on this guy after he misses one kick. I know he missed 2 on the day, but after that first one, oh my goodness, I thought Twitter was going to go down with all the reaction. So be patient. It's also kind of on the offense to score touchdowns and not make him kick 8 field goals in a game. So there's plenty of blame to go around.
I felt the angst within Bills Mafia during this game, and as the first half was happening, and you get to halftime, and what was the halftime score? 10-6 or 10-3?
10-6.
10-6. And really, you look at it, as bad as as bad as things seem, because the offense wasn't really scoring, the run game was really going well for the Jets in the first half. You'd think that the game was completely different based on the reaction on social media, but I think that just speaks to the expectations that people have for this team. And, I kind of asked Josh about this on Friday, and I said, there's some people that are tweeting after those 2 games about like losing faith in this team. And he basically just said, like, this is one small stretch of a season. And this is a team on both sides of the ball that's still learning about itself, and with no preseason. And I know that we keep harping on that, but it's important. So I think as this thing goes along, you'll see a little bit more. A couple stats here. The Bills defense only allowed 4 yards in the second half, marking the fewest yards allowed in the second half by a Bills team since 2000, which is impressive. Josh Allen threw for 307 yards. That marks the 4th 300-yard game of this season, obviously, and he becomes the 4th Bills QB to have 4 such games in one season, and the first since Drew Bledsoe in 2002. How bad has this position been for the Buffalo Bills over the last 2 decades? I mean, scrolled through the highlights in my head, the Trent Edwards, JP Lossman, EJ Manuel, Kyle Orton, you name them. I mean, it has just been one heck of a bad run at quarterback.
And you're forgetting some of these guys that had spot starts, the Jeff Tools of the world, the Brian Brown. I wish Twitter was more I don't even know if Twitter was around when Brian Brown was with the Bills. It might have been, but I wish it was more popular. I feel like MySpace was all the rage at this time. There were some fans that were convinced Brian Brown was going to be the guy. It didn't happen. And I know, when he came out, there was some hype around him. He was terrible. You had Thad Lewis. As long as he was playing Miami, that guy was going to ball out. But anyone else, he kind of hit a wall, except for Cincinnati. He had a really good game against Cincinnati, too, to let him into overtime. Don't know why I remember such useless things, but I do. Quarterback play has been atrocious, though, over the years. They have not been able to find the guy. AVP, Alex Van Pelt. I don't know. I don't want these fans going into therapy this week. They're going to be hurting if I name all of them. So I'll stop there. But, yeah, it's been a struggle. When you probably sit there and say Kyle Orton's been your best quarterback since Bledsoe left before Josh Allen, what does that really say about this team in that position? So Josh Allen, his development continues. He threw for almost 70% completion rate again today. A few plays he'd like to have back. I wish he would have handed that ball off to Zack Moss on 31 late. I wonder if that was just his own decision. He was going to go for it no matter what. So, but yes, you have legitimate quarterback play now. Don't give up on this team after 2 bad games. I'm not saying the Bills are comparable with the Chiefs, so, don't beat me up too bad for this. But the Chiefs lost back-to-back games last year after a 4-0 start. It happens to the best teams, so it's going to happen to a team like the Bills who, like you said, are still trying to figure things out.
I'm going to look in the comments here before we get out of here because I think that there were a few questions that you had marked here. Let's talk about 2 of them in particular. First off, Harrison Phillips was benched again this week. I thought he would get back in the lineup just from, wanting to be a little bit better in the middle against the run. I thought the Bills handled themselves pretty well. Like, let's be honest, though, this Jets offense is terrible. So even the first half, like a bit like the way that they ran the ball on the Bills in the first half, you never want to see that happen. But I thought over the course of the game, obviously the way that they played in the second half, things to build upon. I still think that, you put up a couple trade candidates up on the site. We'll handle a few more of those this week. Tim Settle from Washington and Dalvin Tomlinson from the Giants. I do think the Bills could really benefit from adding a big body nose tackle into the mix here. I don't even know where I was. Oh, Harrison Phillips. So Harrison Phillips benched for the second straight game. And I got a bunch of texts today about, what's going on with him because, people are attached to him a little bit. You know what I mean? I think that the work that he does in the community, the way that he is on social media, I think fans genuinely care about him, want him to succeed. And when you see that, and I basically said, listen, I don't think he's going to be traded, as I think that was the comment here. Will Harrison be traded? But what I do think is happening is they got him out there for the first 5 games of the season, realized that he wasn't really ready for the kind of snap share that maybe they needed from that spot, and they decided to dial things back a little bit. And it also, in the meantime, Justin Zimmer's playing some pretty good football. At least last week he did. We'll see what the tape reveals. I don't know if you had any impressions, but I wouldn't race to that conclusion yet that the Bills are just ready to be done with Harrison Phillips.
I'm not ready to race there yet, but and hat tip to Joe B because he was the first to mention it. I wouldn't be shocked if they traded him a la Zay Jones, where they said, okay, listen, he may not be back to 100% yet, but he may also not be what we're looking for at that one technique position where in terms of what we need from him, because, we elevate Justin Zimmer off the practice squad, this veteran, and he comes in, and although he's kind of playing out of his role, we've had some other guys kind of playing out of their role, they're performing a lot better. And last week, Zimmer shut down the run against Kansas City when he was in there on those run plays. And like you said, I didn't notice him as much today, but the defensive line as a whole played pretty well in that second half. So I'll be interested to go back and watch that game, see how they fared. So, it might just be one of those scenarios where they're like, we like this guy. He bought into the system. He's everything that we want, but he just doesn't fit right now. And especially if they do end up bringing in one tech via trade, whether it's Tomlinson, Settle, or someone else that's out there, well, then maybe just kind of cut ties and hope that he can find a better fit, whether that's via trade or release. And I get it. He is a fan favorite. You don't want to see the fan favorites go like that, but you don't just keep players around to keep them around. If you feel like you can upgrade the position and he doesn't fit your scheme, see what you can get from him first and foremost. But then if there's no role for him and you need those roster spots, part ways with the guy. You hate to see it, but it happens in this league all the time.
I think this is a weird year also, though, that there might be some options with Phillips. He is a guy that's bought into the system. And if you feel like he's not there physically, I think that there's a scenario where they could cut him if they do make a trade and bring him back on the practice squad for a year and just go that route with it. Because I still think that, Sean McDermott, I always go back to this term that he uses, development. And I think that it is a little bit unfair. Now they're in a different situation as a franchise. They don't really have time to wait on some guys at this point. But I think that for Phillips coming off of a second ACL, I would expect that there would be some runway that he would need to get back to the form that he was playing at the beginning of last season. And so, and I go back also to, and I know sometimes fans don't want to hear this, but I think that you look at what he brings from a leadership perspective. He's a guy as a second-year player that was tasked with leading Ed Oliver, who was basically the same age as him, and he welcomed him into the locker room and kind of was asked to show him the ropes and mentor him and so I just think that there is a desire to keep that around. But we could talk more about this. Definitely not a good sign that he was inactive for a second straight week. There was another one I wanted to get to here.
One thing while you're finding that. The one other thing I'll say to your point is, remember how patient they were with Trent Murphy. Murphy was coming off of an ACL injury with the Washington football team when they signed him as a free agent. They kind of came in and said, we knew that in his first year he wasn't going to produce those huge stats that he was kind of flashing that season before, leading up to the year where they suffered the ACL injury with Washington. So they have shown patience in the past. This might be another case of that where they're like, he's just not back to where he needs to be yet. We need to give him some time off on the sidelines. So yeah, they might keep him around and just try to ease him back to get him back to full health. So let's go ahead and look into this next question though.
Another stat too, the Bills sent out a little stat sheet that they usually do after wins like this. Sean McDermott tallied his 30th win as a Bills head coach, passing Wade Phillips for the 4th most in team history. So a little note there. Hate to jump ahead, Elvin McLaughlin says, but we really need to win next week to make a statement. Anyone agree? Well, I'm not so sure about the statement, but I think that they need to win because as we're watching, or at least as the last time I checked, I've seen you kind of looking off to the side. So I think, 23-3. Okay. Yikes. So it's looking like New England potentially here could fall to, will it be 2-4? 2-5. Yes, 2-4 if they lose today. The Bills would be 5-2, 3 games in the win column ahead of the Patriots. That to me is a game where you can absolutely pound out the Patriots in a lot of ways. From a mentality standpoint, from a confidence standpoint, I mean, they're already kind of on the ropes. That's the type of game that you show up as a heavyweight and you go out and you knock a guy out early and take them out. Now, does this Bills team have it in them to do that? It's going to be Josh Allen against Bill Belichick again. We know what the history is there. This defense has struggled. Can they continue the trend and keep Cam Newton neutralized? This offense, which is devoid of playmakers, they have some very, very big misses on their offensive line. I think all those things are in play. I think this is as close to me as a must-win game because we're right there, right? That 5-2 mark where teams in the past have, gotten off to a good start and then started their nosedive. I almost feel like the Bills kind of did this. They trended up. Now they've trended down. Now it's time to spike back up. And I think this is an opportunity. And so maybe I've talked myself into it, Ryan. This is a statement game. I think that this could be, a real confidence builder for the Bills to go in next week and knock off the Patriots and host the Patriots and win decisively.
Yeah. The old saying, you never kick them when they're down. Kick them when the Patriots are down. Kick them, drop the elbow off the top rope. Do whatever you need to do when they're down like this and they're struggling, and they are struggling today. I was just going to say, I don't even know. Maybe I'm jumping the gun here, but I wouldn't be shocked if Cam Newton is not under center for the Patriots in this game. He's struggling. He missed a wide open receiver that could have gone for a big gain. Now he was bailed out by the worst roughing the quarterback penalty I've ever seen. Offensive lineman threw a 49er player into Cam Newton's toe. Cam Newton kind of fell over, and they called the penalty. It was bad. He threw a really bad interception on a drop-off play. He's not playing good football. But that said, this would be a statement win because, one, it moves you to 6-2, but it moves you to 4-0 in the AFC East. That would be huge. And we all know over the last 2 decades how much of a thorn in the side Bill Belichick and this Patriots team has been for Buffalo. So they need this win, just from I would almost think a psychological standpoint. Based on what I've seen from Newton, if he is the starting quarterback, you're going to sell out and play the run against this Patriots team. Dare him to beat him with their arm. And one last thing, Sean McDermott knows Cam Newton better than maybe any other quarterback in this league. So I really do think that he's going to have something game plan to kind of slow him down, whether it's as a rusher or a passer. And this defense is going to enter the game with a lot of confidence after they shut down the Jets completely in the second half.
There's your good buddy there, Lone Wolf on YouTube. He says, take the Pats to Suplex City. I'm sure you will appreciate that reference. There's a couple questions in here. We'll answer a couple of them. Thanks, guys, so much for watching. This is the Shout Bills football podcast on the heels of a Buffalo Bills 18-10 win over the New York Jets, who go to 0-7 on the season. Bills, obviously, to 5-2. Any way the Bills offense can evolve with teams taking away the deep pass. Let me just warn you, don't minimize the loss of John Brown. I think that has been not only evident in the games he hasn't played in 2 of the last 3, but even in the game that he played, hobbled with obviously the knee really affecting him. This offense just didn't look the same. And that's one of the big things we talked about going into the season. Stephon Diggs has been banging the drum at how underappreciated, undervalued John Brown is in the league. We're seeing it play out. I think the deep shots are there because you can't cover downfield Stephon Diggs and John Brown. And so to not have one of those weapons, I think I would reserve that kind of judgment until they're both healthy in the lineup and the Bills still aren't able to attack downfield.
Yeah, but can they evolve? Absolutely. And you do what the Bills did in the second half. You hit those short passes. If you are consistently hitting the short passes, getting 5, 6, 7 yards, moving the chains, well, then the defense kind of has to bring it in a little bit. But that also goes back to something we said earlier in the show. You need to run the ball. If you can run the ball with success and you can hit those shorter passes with success, the bigger plays will start to open up again because defenses will start to sell out the run. They'll start to play up a little bit to try to stop those short gains. So it all goes together. If Allen wants to get that deep ball back, he's got to do what we saw in the second half, take those shorter gains, be accurate with the ball, which he did a very nice job of. One game going a little bit earlier. Yes, this offense can evolve and become more well-rounded and beat you in the short game and the deep game, but they have to show teams first that you can beat them in those areas.
Last one, just plain and simple. Can the Bills stop the run? I think we saw some signs today. The way that they improved in the second half. Now, this is one of the least one of the least imposing running games in the NFL. Frank Gore and, respect to Michael P. Ryan, but, a lower round rookie is not going to send fear into any defensive coordinator's heart. But I do think that we saw some signs today, getting Matt Milano back, even on a limited basis. He split time, didn't play the whole game. AJ Klein was still out there quite a bit, but his speed, quickness, athleticism, it really pops. And I think it helps Tremaine Edmonds. I'm still seeing, some firing errors when it comes to Edmonds, when he's shooting the wrong gap or making the wrong decision. I think that that's just something you're going to have to deal with. And I think that those things will improve with Edmonds when you get this defense whole as much as possible. Especially the most important piece I've noticed for Edmonds is getting a chance to play next to Milano, because when he's there, I think Edmonds plays better.
Yeah, I agree completely with that. I just think Edmonds also needs a little bit of a confidence booster. And he had a ball that bounced off his hands that could have been an easy interception in this game. I think that could have helped him out a little bit. He had a second one where he kind of dove for the ball. He didn't have a great shot on that one. But when you have Milano out there, they've been together for so long. The communication is there. They know exactly where the other one's going to be. And that probably frees you up a little bit. It allows you to play a little more loosely. And then, can they stop the run? Well, let's just say they go back and add a one technique via trade early this week, maybe today, kind of like what the Buccaneers did last Sunday, where they added They traded for a player on Sunday, so I believe he could play this Sunday because of that COVID protocol and knowing the system. So if the Bills can add a guy in here that they feel, hey, we can get this guy in, get him in for the second half of the stretch, be that true one technique that can stop the run, that frees things up for Edmonds. That frees things up for Milano. They don't have to think as much back there. And that's something that we saw Star Lotulelei do. They weren't lying when they said Lotulelei, his impact wouldn't show up on the stat sheet. It didn't, but what he did freed things up for the linebackers, made life easier for the defensive line. And we're starting to see some signs of that based on the rotations that we're getting up front. But if they can add a true one technique, well, I think Edmonds can really come on in the second half of this season.
Indeed. Guys, thank you so much for watching today. This is the Shout Buffalo Bills football podcast. We went way longer than I thought we were going to go, but we have such an active comment section. You guys make it so fun. Please find us on the audio platforms, Apple, Spotify, Google, Stitcher, all of them. Rate, review, subscribe, if you will. It really helps us out. I saw Jason ask about the UFC fight yesterday, Khabib Nurmagomedov. Whoa, what a performance. Absolutely amazing. It was very crazy to see him retire after the fight. And I hope you guys enjoyed my conversation with John Anik the other day, my man. What a great broadcaster he is. And we had some fun talking Bills, New England Patriots. I think you'll like what he said about that. And of course, the UFC. We will be back on Wednesday, our normal time, 7:30, 8, somewhere in that range. We're going to make it work. I don't have a guest yet, but we will definitely line that up shortly. Keep an eye out on my social media. Ryan's social media will announce that. And until then, enjoy the rest of your football Sunday. Your Buffalo Bills win 18-10 over the Jets. For Ryan Talbot, I'm Matt Parrino. Keep it locked on to Syracuse.com, NewYorkUpstate.com for all your Bills coverage. Have a great night, everyone.
Ready for football? With every game a home game, Tops is ready for you with its TV a Day giveaway. For 6 weeks, every day you shop is a new chance to win a massive 70-inch 4K TV. Shop Tops for the best deals in town, in-store, or online to win.